Kerry back with you today. A few weeks ago in the ABC challenge I had made some little slides using actual glass microscope slides. They were very small, and I had also shown one that I had made using Reni's Splatter Frame Digi, and I liked this size better, but at the time I wanted to stick to something real for the challenge. But I did say I would come back and show you how I had created that one, so that's what we're going to do today. So I've got several different colours here. In Reni's usual fashion, she has the kits in all the colours, and I've left the backs blank so you could do a little bit of journaling, or you could add other stamping and things on the back if you wanted to. So this one I've just added a little charm dangle down the bottom there, and as you can see the window is see-through. I've just popped some alcohol ink, hopefully you can see that there, inside the window to give it a bit of a sort of like a microscope slide look. So we will get on and make some. For today's project I'm using Reni's splatter frames. Now I have just cut these out, leaving them joined together, the smaller ones. I've got 3 different ones here. I've also got Reni's Little Bits Kit Set 1, and I've got the light and the dark edition in here. She has recently released the Little Bits Kit 1 in the dark edition, which I absolutely love. And then off to the side here I've got some of the layering labels in colours that match my frames here. So I'm just going to move these out of the way a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is just bring in a piece of scrap paper, and I'm going to take a little bit of brown ink and just ink up the back so that if my folding is a bit rubbish or my cutting hasn't been even, then you won't see the white. Okay, so I've inked around my edges, and now I'm just going to match my ends up together as evenly as I can, and then pop a crease in at the bottom. Okay, then I'm just going to sit those aside. Actually, before I sit them aside, I'm going to punch a hole in to make my microscope slide. So I've got a 1-inch circle punch here. So just making sure that my page is held evenly. I'm just going to line up my hole with this part of my splatter frame, and I want to try to get it as evenly as possible in the middle. So hopefully that'll be close enough. Well, it wasn't very in the middle, top and bottom, but never mind. So this one here, a little bit better there, and this one here. Alright, so I don't actually mind that that one's not even from top to bottom. It would have been no good if it was not even side to side, but I can work with that. And I'll just pop those circles off to the side. We'll use those for something else. So now I'm just going to bring in a piece of paper, and I've got here a piece of just ordinary packing tape. So it's like a wide sticky tape. Now you could probably use ordinary sticky tape, but you want something that's going to be wide enough to cover your hole that we've just made. Now that wants to stick to my fingers, so I'm just going to use my scissors. There we go. Hopefully you can see that on the page there. And I have some alcohol inks. Now I've got latte and oregano here. Now if you don't have alcohol inks, you could maybe try using a little bit of distress ink or some other kind of ink. You'll need something that's a liquid though for it to sit on top of the plastic. So I'm just going to add a few drops here and there. And I've got here some, it's just like table salt, but it's from a grinder, so I'm just sprinkling a little bit over the top. I don't mind if it sticks to the tape and stays inside. I think it sort of will help it look a little bit like organisms or bacteria under the microscope. But I want to make sure that I don't really have any gaps in my colour. So I'm just going to go back in and add a few more drops. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a blast with my heat gun to help it dry off a little bit. I'm just going to stick the end of my tape down so it doesn't blow everywhere. Okay, so I have another piece of packing tape here, and I'm going to stick this sticky side down on top of the one that we had popped the alcohol ink on. And I'm trying to line it up as best I can so there's not really any sticky areas exposed on the edges. There will probably be a little bit because it's hard to get it perfect, but just as close as I can. And then I'm just going to give that a bit of a burnish down. Now, because of the salt, it will have some lumps and bumps in there, but I'm not worried about that. Now I'm just going to take a piece of tissue and push the ink around as much as I can underneath if there's any wet bits of ink, because if they're going to come out, I want them to come out onto this scrap paper and not onto my slides. But it looks like it's staying pretty much put, so that's good. And I'm just going to pop this aside. So I'm going to bring my first slide in, and I'm going to apply a little bit of ink around the holes. And I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to bring over my piece of tape that we've just coloured, and I'm going to cut a straight line, and then I can hold it over my hole and work out where I need to cut a piece off so that it will cover the hole but it won't stick out the edge of my slide. So about there, and I want to try to cut that straight. And again, I'm just going to give it a bit of a rub on the edges to make sure that all of that ink is safe inside the tape. I'm just going to take a little bit of art glitter glue and pop my specimen over the top, and then I'll add a little bit more glue onto the top of the tape, making sure not to go over the hole. And then I can close up my slide. So we've got our first little microscope specimen there. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm just going to do the same with the other two. Okay, so now we've got our three faux microscope slide pieces together. They're little bacteria samples or whatever in our windows. So now I'm just going to ink around the edges. Okay, so I think I might work on the olive green, the teal and the purple side. So I'll start with the olive green, and I've got my layering labels here, And I think what I want to do is use one of these smaller dark labels, and I'm actually going to cut the frame off, so I've just got the sort of label-y part with the script on. And I'll pop that down the bottom here. And then I might pick a smaller label, perhaps with a different coloured border. Maybe this one. And then I'm just going to layer that up on top, about there. And then I'll take something else from the bits and pieces, put that one there. So there we go, that's our first one, and I'll come in after I've glued all the bits down and do some stamping as well. So I'm just going to pop some labels and bits and pieces on these two. Okay, so now I have my label detail. I want to come in with some stamps. So I've got my documented stamp set here, and I also have one of Crafty by Toni's new stamp sets. This is the collector. So I'm going to be using both of these, I think. and I'm going to stamp with VersaFine Clear. So just pop these ones to the side and we'll start with this one. So I think I want this one from the documented stamp set, and I'm going to put that right in the middle there. And then I want to come in with some of Toni's stamps. Now these are so tiny I can't read them until I stamp them. So I'm just going to put that one there that says Fig 05, and this one here, I think this says Collected. Yes it does. And I'm going to put this down the bottom. And then I've got this tiny one that says Filed. I'm just going to stamp that sideways or diagonally across there. I think that'll do for that one. So on this one, this is a very tiny number. I'm just going to stamp that in there. And this looks like a little label with writing on. Upside down, Miss Jane. And this one says entomology, which I guess it's not really, but I don't care. I'm just going to put it there. And then I'm going to take this round sort of postmarky looking thing, and I think that will do for that one. Bit big. That one will work. Not sure which way is which. I think it's going to go this way. Then I'm just going to come back in with the postmark stamp. A couple more postmarks on there. And then to finish off, I might pop eyelet in that I could hang a charm off if I want to, or just because I like the look of the eyelet anyway. So there we go. And I might just leave that one without. So there we go. I know they're a little bit hard to see because of the glare, but hopefully you can see that. And we've got our little see-through window on there. Sorry about the glare. Hopefully you can see that there. I'll pop some photos up at the end and that'll make it a little bit easier to see. So there we go, and I think they'll look super cute just tucked in a little pocket, and there's room on the back to do some journaling or some extra stamping if you wanted to. So they're pretty fun and addictive to make. As you can see, I've got quite a collection here now. So I'll leave links in the description box below to the kits that I have used in today's project. I'll also leave a link in the description box below to Toni's channel, and she's the one that had the collector stamps that I was using along with our documented stamp set. So thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye!